So afternoon, live from Pretoria. We are in Impulse Radio Africa and Amani TV. And next to me I have Dr. Fonteh, Executive Director of the Institute for Security Study. Welcome to our program.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to have you. So we speak about security because we might move the way we want, eat what we want, but security is one of the key elements of peace and stability of the continent. So on your eyes, how do you see security and how do you define security?
So I wish I could define security through my eyes, right? But I think we have to define security more collectively as a way in which we advance both individual and collective development agendas on the continent, and how we protect communities which are most vulnerable. And there's a necessity, in fact, in thinking through human security to centralize the community and individuals as part of this agenda.
Thank you for the illustration and the way you put security and the role that security have to play also in the development and the growth of Africa. So what is for you at this, in 2022, the different challenges that we have in terms of safety in Africa?
2022, there's many challenges as there are opportunities on the continent, because the continent seems to find itself in a transitional period. We just came out of, or we are emerging from the COVID-19 process. At the same time, COVID-19 had economic implications for Africa, although not enough health implications. So there is the imperative to understand how Africa recovers from the economic consequences of COVID-19. Against the backdrop of COVID-19, we have also seen a worsening of the crisis mapping in Africa, an expansion of the terrorist threat beyond the Sahel to West Africa's coastal states, and the potential for that is growing. We also have a deepening of the map of violent extremism within the Sahel, with an increase in violent extremist incidents. But beyond that, you would know that within the last week there was a serious bombing as well in Somalia, which cost over 100 lives. And over the past 2 years, Africa has seen upwards of 5-6 military coups as well. So these are all factors, they are all manifestations of different forms of insecurity on the continent, and that which necessitate responses as well.
Will you say that the instability and the safety of the continent will be from an external or an internal approach? Will you say Africans are most vulnerable today because of the outside impact? Because we spoke about, when we speak about the Sahel, we know we speak about the access to weapons, and we know, I think we saw Mali pointing fingers to France and say that they are the ones supplying weapons to the terrorists in the Sahel.
Well, it's hard to disaggregate external from internal dynamics, right, when you're living in a very globalized world. So there are ways in which external factors, such as COVID, or factors that become internal, such as COVID-19, would have implications for governance, peace and security on the continent. But there are also ways in which an issue like the war in Ukraine, which might be very distant from Africa, would have implications as well for actors on the continent. The second thing to take into consideration is the ways in which external actors actually engage on the continent, whether they engage to advance the continent's development agenda or they engage in a destabilizing fashion. And the third factor to take into consideration would be Africa's potential to actually define its own agenda away from external influence, which is a certain degree of positional and policy autonomy for Africa. These are all questions which need to be addressed, but the only way that they become important is if they contribute to advancing Africa's peace and prosperity as well.
I will go a bit further when we speak about the situation, the political situation in certain region will you say that the insecurity also might be the result of, like you spoke about, internal affairs, of bad governance?
Well, there's a certain degree of, I don't know that I would qualify it as bad governance or ineffective governance,
yeah.
right? Because ineffective governance speaks to a number of issues. What are the expectations of communities and citizens within a country? And what is the delivery? And what is the offer? So expectations versus offer could be dissonant.
Yes.
That's one. The second is the control of the territory, at least administratively, and how that control is actually deployed. Is the state perceived as a predatory state outside of the capital city?
Yes.
Or is it seen as a state that provides the kinds of services that communities need? These are all governance factors that need to be taken into consideration. But then, when you have a situation like COVID or the war in Ukraine, which actually increases the cost of governance because it limits the amount of resources that a government can expend on basic service provision, with a concentration of that expenditure on healthcare, then it's undue pressure on governments which might not have the requisite revenue already to deliver on specific services. And that kind of undue pressure could be destabilizing.
Yes.
So it's not then really a function of ineffective governance, it becomes a function of the resource availability to effectively deal with the challenges.
And what will for you will be the state of safety and security in Africa right now against forces coming from outside? In an honest point of view.
I don't know that there is a clear empirical articulation of the implications of external influence for peace and security on the continent. Right? I would like to flag three issues. The first is the climate consequences on Africa. When you look at certain spaces like the Sahel, the Lake Chad Basin, Mozambique and Zimbabwe, these are areas which are subject to climate transformations, right? And so of course you could look at external influence in terms of carbon emissions from developed economies as a cause for this. So that's an external influence. The second would be relations between states and the alliances that are created. When a country decides they want to break with a past relationship, which they describe as colonial, the question is, what are the implications for peace and security? Do they move towards alliances that deliver more safety and security for their people, or they move towards alliances that are more destabilizing? It's a question, the verdict is still out on that one. So to claim that there is undue external influence on Africa, on African peace and security, would be to deny Africa's agency in actually, as actors in those patterns of insecurity as well.
Yeah, before we close, I would like to take your take on what, according to your vision and understanding of the situation right now, will be the agenda and the mandate of the African Union.
Well, the African Union has set itself up with Agenda 2063, which it's rolling out. It's reaching the first 10-year implementation window next year. It might be a good point, given the shocks of COVID-19 and the global transformations taking place, to actually reflect on the potential necessity to have Agenda 2063 2.0, which basically adapts it and adjusts it to the current realities, and then adding onto it issues which were not necessarily taken into consideration in 2013, and also drawing lessons from this as well. I think that would be key. The second, the priority to silence the guns by 2030. It's something that the AU has as a high priority as well, and which is a noble priority, and which the African Union Department for Political Affairs, Peace and Security is driving at the moment. And the third issue that Africa would be focusing on would be the outcomes of COP27, which is taking place in Sharm el-Sheikh. A lot of debate is taking place around just energy transitions at the moment, and Africa is disproportionately affected by accelerated climate degradation. So these are issues which the African Union is leading on, and they are issues which are top on their agenda, and which I think they have a chance to actually deliver on.
So thank you for your time. But before I let you go, I wanted to, on this personal level, in terms you spoke about silencing part of the do you believe that is doable? Do the African Union has the capacity to achieve this goal?
Well, the African Union is not driving. Who's the African Union, right? The African Union, in fact, is us.
Yes.
The African Union is its member states. It is the sum total of the regional economic communities. Can we do it? Yes, I think we can. Do we want to do it? I'm not sure. If warring factions don't want to come to the peace table, how would we silence the guns, right? So we cannot put undue responsibility on one organization. Everyone has their responsibility in silencing the guns.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
Hope to see you soon.
It's a pleasure.
Bye-bye.